Welcome everybody. As Melissa suggests, the first day of a brand new month. Here we are, Webinar Wednesday, the first one of September of 2021. And there is so much excitement around the new school year. Students are back in school, they're back in labs. It feels absolutely great as we get out there with you. So really looking forward to a great year. And I'm also really looking forward to the announcement that today's guest is going to make on Webinar Wednesday. We are going to get to that in just a minute. But before I introduce our guests, I want to tell you a little bit about a trip that I took to his company's corporate headquarters. The company, of course, is FANUC, and many of you will recognize the picture on the left-hand side of your screen as being of Mount Fuji, an absolutely beautiful mountain. And from the FANUC headquarters in Japan, on a clear day, you have almost the same view that you see there in your picture. It's absolutely wonderful. And I've had the opportunity to visit FANUC's campus in Japan twice in the last 5 years or so, and it is always a treat. If you ever get an opportunity to make that trip, I would highly recommend that you do that. On the right-hand side of your screen, you have a video that I took as we were traveling through that campus. And by now, you already know it is absolutely massive. We got about halfway through in this video. It's 4.5 minutes long. And for certain parts of this video, we're actually moving at a fairly high rate of speed. And so it's huge. It's amazing. You drive by all of these incredible buildings, employee dormitories. You drive by R&D facilities, manufacturing facilities. We see their corporate operations and offices, showrooms, building after building after building. One of the coolest things is that you can't see any one of those buildings from another building, because the forest on which this campus is built is so dense and the trees are so dense that you literally can't see building to building, even though there are over 18 million square feet of buildings on the FANUC campus. It's absolutely amazing there. The people there are amazing. Both of my trips were absolutely wonderful. And as you can see, and as we've already said, it is completely massive, as well it should be, because FANUC is the largest robotic manufacturer in the world. By some estimates, more than 55% of industrial robots in the United States are FANUC robots. They're also a huge manufacturer and the largest manufacturer of CNCs in the world. Again, some estimates put that number as high as 65 or 70% of CNC machines and CNC controls in manufacturing operations are FANUC controls. What's interesting, though, is that in spite of that huge market share, up until a few years ago, if you walked into a local community college, if you walked into a technical college, if you went into a high school that was teaching CNC, a lot of times you didn't see a lot of FANUC controls in those programs. Now, there are a number of reasons for that. We're not going to go into all that today, but what I will tell you is that is starting to change. At the community colleges, the 3 in southeastern Wisconsin, where I live, we call them technical colleges here in the state of Wisconsin. All 3 of those colleges have FANUC CNC controls prominently on display and being used by their students. And that is changing all over the United States. More and more FANUC CNC controlled machines, more and more FANUC CNC robo drills, more and more FANUC CNC simulators, and so on, that we see in our educational institutions. And that is the result of some hard work by great people at FANUC, one of whom is joining us today as our guest. So at this point in time, it's my pleasure to introduce our guest. He is Joe Baldiga from FANUC America. He is responsible for the FANUC Certified Education Program on the CNC side of FANUC. He works with educators all over the United States, all over North America, and he has great relationships with them and great respect for them, because he also has a tremendous amount of industry expertise as well. Now, Joe believes that there is a growing need for skilled CNC talent here in the United States, and that creates amazing opportunities for students who learn how to program and operate FANUC CNCs. So with that, Joe, I'm really excited about our discussion today. Welcome to Webinar Wednesday.
Thank you, Matt. Appreciate the introduction. I'm really grateful to be here. Just thank you for taking the time to coordinate this and put it all together. And I'd also like to wish all of the instructors returning back to school and all the students the best of luck with this year and in this exciting time. Looking forward to today's discussion.
As am I. So let's get started with it. I think most of our listeners, most of our attendees are probably fairly familiar with FANUC, but for the handful who might not be, what can you tell us about FANUC and its operations and FANUC as a company, Joe?
Well, yeah, you really gave us a pretty good introduction there, Matt. But I guess to reiterate what you said, we are the world's largest supplier of industrial robots, CNC controls, and automation solutions, as well as Industry 4.0 solutions. There isn't much today that isn't in manufacturing environment that isn't touched by a robot or CNC machine, and in most cases, it is a FANUC product that is doing that. So we do have a wide market share out there. Really the lion's share of the market in manufacturing is FANUC product. Microsoft, some Forbes magazine called us the Microsoft you've never heard of. If you're not in manufacturing, the name FANUC may not be familiar to you at all, but certainly if you are in manufacturing or in that type of workspace, it is a well-known name in the industry.
Yeah, the Microsoft you've never heard of, I absolutely love that. I've heard that before, and I think it really does explain the prominence and the dominance, if you will, that FANUC has in the world of manufacturing. So I know in as much as we're talking with technical educators today and your role at FANUC focuses on the education side of your business, what can you tell us about FANUC's approach to CNC education and about the tools that are available to instructors, teachers, and CNC programs for sharing important competencies?
Yeah, absolutely. To go along with typically our CEO, Mike Chico, usually says when he describes the company, he says we are a group of problem solvers. So we're solving manufacturing challenges and problems using technology, engineering, creativity. And there is definitely a growing need in the market, and there is a challenge that a lot of our manufacturers face, is that there is a tremendous skills gap and there's a challenge to find employees. So we try to solve that by providing CNC education equipment and materials and curriculum that are geared toward making sure that the workforce is skilled, and then we can provide students with a good career, not just a job, but a good career where they can make a good wage and provide for their families. So often when I try to describe our program, we provide it's a train the trainer program where we will train the instructor, we can certify them. It's a series of online classes and an instructor-led class at a FANUC facility. But really, to have a good training program, I think there's three elements, and really it's the equipment that you're using. It should be real industrial equipment, not a lower grade education product. I mean, there is value in some of that to at least introduce students to those concepts, but when they get out into the workforce, it's not necessarily what they're training on in the technical college level. We want them to be able to walk out of school and walk into a factory and be able to recognize the equipment right from the get-go, because that's what they've already been trained on and that's what they've been certified on. Additionally, having that FANUC certification makes them extremely more marketable as they put their resume out there, and that FANUC name will certainly register with the manufacturers. So the first part is the curriculum. The next part is a passionate instructor who's knowledgeable on the curriculum and on the materials. So having that training where we can provide the instructor training and get them knowledgeable on the equipment and how to facilitate that training is a very key aspect of our program. We know that teachers wear a lot of hats and move departments and shift from area to area, but we want to try to make that as easy as possible. And along with that, then the third element is the curriculum material. Having a curriculum that goes along and it's easy for the teacher to be able to administer and present the concepts to the students, being able to use online tools or some of our other application products, such as our NC Guide, which is PC simulation that emulates the controller, as well as our CNC simulator, which is basically a CNC control without the motors. So students are able to navigate through all the menus, type in offsets, understand how to load programs, and do a lot of variety of tasks using the CNC simulator. And then we also have our machining simulator, which is a full virtual twin of a CNC machine, which allows them to work in an environment that's safe. It's a controlled environment. It has real machining noises. If there's a collision that occurs, there's colors that change. You can see the full tool path. So there's a lot that can be done in a safe environment before moving on to the real equipment. And real equipment is what we really want to stress, is that the important part of becoming certified is that students have to learn how to, I'm going to say cut metal, but there's several different materials that CNC machines can cut. And we want to get them familiar with that. So it's a continuation of knowledge build with the e-learn, the curriculum, the simulation software, and then onto the real machine for the real application training on real equipment.
And all four of those elements are so very important. And you've done such a nice job of putting that suite together. I like the reference of FANUC being people who solve problems, being problem solvers. I've heard Mike Chico say that many times. In fact, I think one of the times I heard him say that was when we were in Japan together on that trip, one of those trips I referenced not too long ago. I also happened to be in Japan with Mike when initially he was announced as FANUC America's president and chief operating officer. So it was fun to celebrate that with him. That was a really, really big announcement. You have a really big announcement today to make to our audience about a new partnership that you've created. What can you tell us about this new partnership with Doosan?
Yes, so FANUC has some tremendous machine tool builders all throughout a wide variety of industries. So hundreds of companies can put together great quality machines. When we are looking at education, though, the machines that a lot of our machine tool builders can supply are very high end, and typically those kind of fall outside of the budget for academic pursuits. These are most machine tools are production high capability production machines, very advanced, and with that comes a cost and an expense. So when we look into education and we're talking about the type of machines that are needed in the education market, we kind of had a hole in our portfolio of offerings. We have a partnership with a company, Level Technologies, out of Central Florida, that builds a great small compact classroom CNC machine, so a lathe, a mill, and they have an EDU mill that's very small that can double as a 3D printer. And then on the opposite end, FANUC also has our RoboDrill product, which is a high-end machining center, drilling, tapping, boring, milling. But we didn't have sort of the middle of the road products that a lot of schools are even asking for. So they wanted maybe something that wasn't so small, maybe mid-size, I would say. And that's when I noticed that Doosan had recently released two tremendous machines that are great value, extremely robust, reliable, the newest and latest, greatest control in an economical package. And so we talked to the Doosan Machine Tools of America sales and the VP of marketing, and discussed trying to see what could be done to potentially offer these to education. And they saw the need as well, and see the need for a skilled workforce trained on lathes and mills, and thought it was a great opportunity. So we were able to connect our educational solutions providers with the Doosan dealers and be able to provide some great solutions that I think are going to really help to solve that skills gap problem.
So an amazing partnership that you managed to create, and credit to you and to the rest of the team at FANUC for all the work that went into this, and for that matter to the team at Doosan. Just a really great product that hits the market right where it needs to be, as you suggest, a mid-sized machining center featuring that latest and greatest FANUC control. I know our audience is wondering a little bit, Joe, as we talk about FANUC, as we talk about your certainly your dominance in the CNC world, why do you think it's important for students to be learning machining capabilities and machining competencies on an actual FANUC control?
It goes back to the market share. If you look at the figures that 2 out of every 3 CNC machines in industry are FANUC control, students are going to see a FANUC control when they get out into either a large manufacturing facility or even smaller job shops. So it's the employability for the students, that they already have that skill set. They're not having to kind of relearn a different control that they're unfamiliar with. So that gives them a tremendous leg up when they get out into the job market. And really, I think of the role of a school is to help prepare students for life, for the job market. We all know careers can take different pathways and things, but some students have a very direct line that I want to do this, or this is the direction I want to go. And it makes sense to give them the right tools to make them successful. Industry is education's customer. And so we need to be able to have the product that's coming out of schools be exactly what industry needs. Likewise, industry needs to be helping schools by getting on their boards, advising, helping out, mentoring, tutoring, offering apprenticeships. So it's a two-way street. We need to have this nexus moment or an alignment moment where schools and industries can partner together and help to create those career pathways and the living wage and those opportunities. And it's going to help the U.S. economy be more competitive.
It's a two-way street indeed, as educators and private employers, manufacturers, industrial employers work together for mutual benefit, the benefit of the industry, the benefit of the education institution, and probably most important, the benefit of those individual students who are now learning these really important competencies when it comes to setup, operation, programming, CNC controls, and learning them on the controls they will see when they get to manufacturing. Now, as we see the world of machining evolving, I know that your training programs and your solutions don't stop, Joe, at setup and programming and operations. You're extending yourselves into some more advanced operations as well. Tell our audience, if you would, about some of the more advanced solutions that you've got for education in integrating machining and even in some cases beyond machining.
Well, one of the ways to improve productivity is to add automation, or typically it's referred to as adding a robot to a CNC machine to monitor and do the tending. So there'll be a machining process that needs to be done. A blank gets loaded, the robot pulls out, the door closes, the machining process happens, door opens, the robot goes in. Usually it will pick up the finished part, place a new part, and then that cycle continues. Well, all of that needs to be programmed by someone, that needs to be maintained by operators, and do all those various tasks. So the next step is typically would be to take your program. If you're just offering CNC machining, you could offer the next step then is to add a robot. So a couple of solutions that we showed here is our MTech cell that's currently showing that it's paired with our robo drill, but there is options to pair it with the level technology machine or even a Doosan. And then on the other side there, we actually have our CNC machining simulator. So this is a way to simulate loading a machine tool. So the robot would go over and load into a fixture, and then a virtual machining process would occur, and the virtual machine would signal it's done, and it would load a different part. So students are able to learn that concept of machine tending. So more and more factories are automating and adding robots. So technicians, so you can't necessarily silo your skill set to I'm just machining, I'm just this. Really, it's a full automation system or fully automated tending, machining. It's all these processes working together.
And I should note for our audience that the pictures that we have on the screen are actually products that are solutions you put together through your relationship with APT Manufacturing Solutions, another great FANUC partner, another great FANUC relationship, showing that you are doing just an amazing job of finding world-class companies to partner with as you take these solutions to education and as manufacturing technology continues to evolve. You know, Joe, I thought it was interesting in your introduction of FANUC, you referred to the company as a robotics company, a CNC company, and an Industry 4.0 company. And you most certainly are through solutions that you have on the Industry 4.0 front and some of the really interesting things you're doing with connected systems. Why don't we talk about that for just a moment? Is there a school that you might highlight who's doing really, really innovative things in the world of Industry 4.0 through a relationship with FANUC?
Yes, certainly the first one that comes to mind is Gateway Tech in your area. They recently installed our MT-Link I solution, which is a remote monitoring software. We can set up a virtual shop floor. In the image you're showing here, it looks like they're actually using the image to show the status of various pieces of equipment within their facility. But this is something that's offered to industry. So a full machine shop with robots, FANUC CNCs, other CNCs from other manufacturers, all in one facility can be networked basically through a mainframe, one mother station, and we can monitor the full utility layout of the floor and get live feed of what active alarms are going on, what the current status of the machines are, whether there's an emergency stop or a hold or if it's disconnected. But then you can go into a lot more diagnostics, dial in to see which parameters have changed, the status of certain I/O. You can look at the current of a motor or the temperature of a motor. So a lot of this is the big data that we're trying to crunch and be able to do either process improvements. We can see how much productivity a machine is doing. We can monitor if someone went in and was fiddling around with buttons that they shouldn't have and change some programs. But all of it is to try to use that data to improve efficiencies and do things better across the line. And this MT Link I is a great solution for industry as well as education to teach those concepts. You know, robotics and CNC, it's great because it's multidiscipline. You have controls, so software programming. So if somebody likes to play video games or you know, do things like that, maybe software programming is right for you. If you're somebody who likes to turn a wrench, very mechanically minded, you know, changing a motor or an RV reducer. If you're electrically minded, running through schematics. If you like, you know, like networking and servers, all of this, everything now is connected by Ethernet, and we're able to dial in, whereas before it used to be discrete lines running to, you know, multiple lines running to equipment. Now it's just an Ethernet cable running and be able to communicate all that data. If you're into mathematics, you can even analyze the data.
So some great examples of multidisciplines in terms of manufacturing and competencies and knowledge that our students need to have. I love the fact that you highlighted Gateway Technical College in that answer. Certainly Brian Albrecht, Ray Kakari, David Aguirre, who does a great job of running the lab that we're looking at in that picture. Real true leaders in the world of Industry 4.0 education, and a great example of how we can do this in a technical college environment in a really, really advanced way. So I appreciate you making that reference, Joe. And really, when we think about it, it's all about really cool technology, but it's also about creating an amazing workforce. And I know as we inspire more and more young people toward careers in machining, I know this is a passion of yours. Tell us a little bit about, if you would, about the job outlook for students who are looking for opportunities in the world of machining.
Well, recently it was reported there are 814,000 open positions in manufacturing right now. So if you're looking for a job, they're out there and they're available. But that's you know, the plan is that that's continuing to grow. Studies report that by 2030 there will be an estimated 4.6 million manufacturing jobs out there, and unfortunately, they're also reporting that 2.6 million of those will go unfulfilled, largely because of a skills gap. And when I say there's a skills gap, it's basically there are a lot of jobs available out there, but there aren't necessarily the people to meet the requirements to fill that gap. And as I had said earlier, that's kind of a combination of somebody either having some personal gumption to go out and work hard and take that initiative and be driven to go out and get that career, get those skills, add value to themselves, to make themselves more employable, so they can make a higher wage and provide for their family. It's also that gap is related to industry needing to advocate for what their needs are to education and support education. And we also need to make sure that we're exposing students early on to these potential careers. You know, unfortunately for me, you know, I've had 20 years of experience at FANUC, but I didn't even know my high school had a robotics program until my senior year. And by then it was too late and I wasn't even in the robotics program. You know, but making sure that's exposed, opening up your doors. Manufacturing Day 2021 is coming up soon. So if you're a manufacturer in your area, certainly I know there's different restrictions in different regions on COVID and tours and things like that, but try to expose students, give them access to your facility and talk to them and advocate for what you do and explain that manufacturing is not a dirty, dangerous, difficult, dull job. It's high tech, it's fascinating. You're able to use your creativity. Every day is different. It's a new challenge. So they're great opportunities out there to have an extremely rewarding job. I think an automation engineer is number 4 on one of the most rewarding jobs that you can have. Automation engineer is also the number 1 job that manufacturers say they're looking for. So it seems like there's a disconnect that we need to try to rectify.
Yeah, anytime one of the most enjoyable and rewarding jobs is also one of those that is most in demand, that's a good thing for those people who go out and become educated in a way that they can qualify for roles like that. That's really important. You referenced in a couple of your answers already, Joe, the importance of industrial employers partnering with their local community colleges, high schools, technical colleges, universities. You talked a little bit about advisory boards. You talked a little bit about bringing people into the plant for tours. What are some other things that our industrial employers should be considering as they plan to build really robust partnerships with their local educators?
I think it goes into if you want your employees to invest in your company, the employee does need to feel like that you have a vested interest in them, that you care about them and their growth. So providing, apprenticeship is a great example of a way to get a student into the door, start them off, and they can earn while they learn. So they can start off with those base level skills that are specific to your facility, and then in the evenings or even during work hours, do some online training or go off to a technical college and help supplement their learning. So it's working in parallel, the on-the-job training as well as the training and the competencies that are offered through the educational institutes. I think that's the biggest part. If you have a lot of job openings right now and you're a manufacturer and you're looking for machine operators, machinists, all those different areas, and you don't have a good apprenticeship program already in place, or you don't have a good relationship with your local community college, technical college, or even your high school or universities, then that's where we need to bridge that gap and try to communicate, this is the needs of industry, this is the needs of the job market, and how do we fulfill those?
Great examples of how we can go ahead and bridge that gap, as you put it, Joe, and build great relationships between employers and their local school districts, their local technical and community colleges. Those partnerships make such a huge difference, and we would certainly encourage the industrial employers who are on with us today to consider, no matter how great your relationship is with your local educational institution, what are some things that you could do to make it that much better. Now, Melissa, we've had a great discussion here with Joe. I know we have a pretty large audience here for this particular edition of Webinar Wednesday. What kind of questions are you hearing from our audience?
Absolutely. Thanks, Matt. And thanks, Joe. And to our audience, if you do have any questions, keep on putting them down in that Q&A box, and we will pose them to our panelists now. So the first question that came through, Joe, was from and actually it came from a manufacturing employer. And it's great to see some of those folks on today with us. And this employer says that they use Doosan machines that are much larger in their manufacturing facility. Are the skills the students learn on these other two machines you showed transferable to the much larger machines?
Yes, certainly. So the DEM 4000, the Leo 1600, both of these machines have the FANUC 0IF Plus, which is our latest control that's available in that series. However, FANUC does a really nice job of trying to keep a lot of the menu screens similar across platforms, so even across generations. So the navigations now on maybe a multi-axis machine may have a few more bells and whistles or a few more menus that can go through, but the main concepts and the main navigation and a lot of the operations and functions will be the same on the 0IF Plus as it would be for like a 31IB5, as for example.
Excellent. The next question is, again, on these same two new machines that we announced today. Would these be appropriate in a high school setting?
Yes, absolutely. These are not very large machines. So typically footage-wise, you're about 6 by 7 by about 6 feet tall on the lathe and about 8 feet tall on the mill. So from that perspective, they're not significantly large. However, other things that we can do is, if you're concerned about, okay, well, it might be an investment to have these machines. We do have our machining simulator, which you can plug a monitor into the CNC control, and you have a full virtual machine that is an identical twin for each of these machines already loaded up into a PC on there. So all of that, all of the concepts and the machining processes can all be done offline in a virtual environment, so the students can learn and you can vet them out, vet their programs prior to loading it onto the real machine to mitigate any of that risk that you might feel stepping up to the real machine. And that's even might be a good starting point if while you're in the budgeting stage, looking to purchase these machines, you could even purchase these machining simulators and teach a lot of these concepts up front before you get into the next level of where you're cutting metal or other type of materials.
Awesome. Thank you for that explanation and for mentioning the CNC simulator. I think we have time for one more question. That is on these FANUC controls. Is it all M and G code programming, or is there conversational programming options?
Yes, yes. So on the CNC simulator controls, we do have our conversational programming built into the CNC simulators. We call that manual guide I. And basically that's a series of menu prompts where you enter certain like part geometries. It's kind of like a startup wizard, and you can go in and enter in all those certain values, and then that will convert it to the G code. I will say on the version of the 0IF Plus control that are on the Doosan machines, they do not have the manual guide I, but you would have that capability using the simulators to be able to teach the conversational programming. So I think they call it Easy Guide I in the Doosan world. But yes, you'd have it through the CNC simulators and machining simulators, but it's not capable on the physical control of the real machine.
Great. Thank you for that explanation. Those are great questions. Thank you for our audience for asking those. And if you do have more questions on the specifications or some of those really detailed questions, or if you're just interested in any of the things that you've seen today, just shoot us an email and we'd be happy to talk more, whether you're an educator or an industrial employer. All right, Matt, I will leave it to you to wrap things up for today.
All right. Thank you, Melissa. What a great discussion we've had with Joe today. Joe Baldiga, thank you so much from FANUC America for joining us for this episode of Webinar Wednesday. We have a great episode coming up for you next week, talking about e-learning as part of our industrial program we're doing every other week. So we look forward to seeing you on that. As everybody knows, we are here every Wednesday at 2 o'clock Central. We'll see you next week.